We're talking with Navy veteran Jay Patterson with Wolfpack Leadership. Jay, welcome to the show. Got a lot to talk about with business and entrepreneurship. Before we do that, take us back and tell us what you did in the Navy.
Sure, Joe. And again, thanks for having me on. I greatly appreciate it. Number one, I grew up in North Dakota, so I mean that's kind of hard to believe somebody from North Dakota would move to join the Navy. But I was the son of law enforcement. My dad, my uncle, my other uncle was sheriff. So needless to say, my choices were join the Navy or go to the Hard Rock Hotel by the time I was a teenager. So I chose the Navy. I actually signed up on my 17th birthday, and I knew what I wanted to do. I wanted to ride submarines, of all things. I was afraid of aircraft carriers, heights. So I didn't want to have to jump off an aircraft carrier. So I was like, yeah, let's go submarines. Of course, I was a fan of Star Trek also. So you kind of sit there and you look at that and you go, yeah, there's kind of similarities. So uh, I joined the Navy. I started into schools. I was an electronics technician. So on submarines for fast attack submarines, that led me up to the front of the ship. And what I did is I ran electronic surveillance measures, which pretty much is spook stuff. Okay, and then on the flip side, I ran navigation and geoplotting. So that's what I cut my teeth on when I first joined the Navy on my first submarine on the East Coast. And the Cold War was great. Being single, Cold War. You didn't stop in many ports, but the operations were awesome. And I'll never forget the times that we had. After that, again, I ran training departments at or divisions actually at two different commands, and I also ran planning and estimating, which is anything on a submarine that would make it sink and not come back up. I actually did all the work packages for that work for the old boomer submarines. Everything was going great. Cold War ended, and my last deployment, we were over in the Med doing NATO ops, and I had a medical emergency, and I got disqualified submarines. And this was during the Clinton downsizing, so I had 30 days notice that I was going to be retiring from the military. So
Wow.
it was like a whirlwind tour at that point. And, the options, I tried to go Army or I tried to go minesweep, and they're like, you're untrainable, you know? So, but, hey, that's okay. There's always something else down the road, right?
Yeah. I usually ask folks, was your transition out of the Navy quick, expected, unexpected? You have a lot of time to prepare, but now we know the answer to that. So tell us about
Yeah.
the transition, the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Well, we had, I think it was called TAP at that point. This would have been in the mid 90s.
Uh-huh.
And, the actual transition training was good, but it was good, but it definitely didn't prepare you for what you're running into. Okay. I had interviews set up across the nation, everywhere from Colorado over to Cincinnati, Ohio. And my goal was, of course, get out there, get seen, get hired right away. Well, I found out very quickly it wasn't that easy. So, but I did find a company that was about 3-4 hours away from my home in North Dakota, down in South Dakota, a company that uh, they 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 provided 80% of the monitors for Gateway computers, for those that remember Gateway computers. And it
Mhm.
was a repair facility, and they had a lot of issues. And that's what I did in the military. I'd go to commands normally where there were challenges, a hard to fill billet, or it was hotel loads or etc. So I walked into this place. They had inventory problems, they had operations problems, they had repair problems. I mean, you name it, they had problems. So it was probably my fifth interview that I had. But I took the position, and probably the biggest challenge, during the transition is I was always at sea or tied up, so I didn't have a degree. And that still is probably the biggest challenge that I've dealt with my entire career. Even though I've ran, you know, hundreds and hundreds of people, it's still having that piece of paper along with the experience.
Absolutely. Yeah, the degree thing's always there. I think it's just an easy way for companies, businesses to cut down the cut down the application pool to a smaller group sometimes, Um, and oftentimes it really doesn't matter what the degree is in, whether that qualifies or not. So yeah, it's always a sore, touchy subject. So you figured out you like problem solving.
I've always loved problem solving ever since I was a kid. I loved it, and it was, again, I was in Boy Scouts, and it's like how to achieve. We had a scout fair every year, right? And how do you win that scout fair? And I mean, through trial and error, we ended up winning it. And when I was senior patrol leader, it's you know, no matter the command that I was in, or uh, probably my longest stint, and I was 16 years for a company that had to reinvent itself after 9/11. And
Mm.
it was the same challenges. We had no cash. So it was unlike the military where you just changed the name and then it put more cash into it. We had to reinvent ourselves with our own cash. And after 9/11, and, there were times you wouldn't get paid, in management. There were times that, you were totally moving your cheese. For those that, of course, have read the book, Who Moved Your Cheese? That's what we were doing. It was like, and it took us 8 years to get positioned where we could sell the company. But again, it was as simple as, okay, we're losing 25% of our customers a year because how many checks do you write right now? Joe, do you write any checks?
Not very often.
Okay, that was our entire business, was equipment that process checks. So
Yeah.
a check would normally go from you to the store, to the bank, to the Fed, back to the bank, back to the store, well, back to the bank, etc., and back to the store because they'd get their return checks. And our whole business was based on that. And when 9/11 happened, what happened? All the planes were grounded. And it took, again, new laws were put into place and regulations where you could scan a check. And so we were sitting there with their, pretty much stuck. And what we did is we reinvented ourselves to work on anything in a bank. And I ran operations and logistics during that time frame, and then sales support too, so we could do that. And we had around 4,000 customers nationwide. And again, it's back to that problem solving. There's nothing like that rush when you solve a problem. I don't care. I just enjoy it. And when I see that aha look when you walked into a place where people weren't allowed the power to make decisions, etc.
Yeah.
Going in there and allowing them to do that, to actually fail, so that they can learn from their failures and not worry about getting smacked upside the head, right? And and seeing that aha moment within them, see them grow into leaders down the road. So Ben, I hope that answers your question on problem solving. But yeah, I mean it excites me. Every problem solving is great,
Oh yeah.
and we got plenty of them nowadays.
Back talk with Navy veteran Jay Patterson with Wolfpack Leadership. So Jay, um, you've always loved problem solving. You're out of the Navy. You're in the civilian sector. Your first job is a problem solving type job. So you stayed in the problem solving business for quite a while. Over the years, you've helped a lot of businesses, a lot of major corporations also solve problems. You're basically a problem solver for them. So what are some of the common themes you see in businesses and where their problems are in being a problem solver?
Well, that's a good question, Joe. I think, out the gate, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to go with decision making. Okay. I've seen that pretty much everywhere where people are afraid to make decisions. It might be failure, they don't want to fail at something. It could be 101 things, but, that has been one of the probably the largest issue to overcome. And, and going as simple, simply telling people, not making the decision is a decision. So you might as well make a decision, okay? Because you can tweak a decision. You can't tweak a non-decision. I know I might sound like somebody running for office right now. Just stop going in that direction. But the kicker is, that's the key. Is you have to get people to get off the dime to make a decision, because you can always fix them. And how I've done that with people is, when I walk into any business, whether I was outside contractor, consultant, or if I was working for the company, is taking over operations, sales, logistics. You got to spend time, with people. You got to understand what's going on out there. And I've got my 3 E's that I always do, and that I drive my managers always to do. It's 3 E's where you got to engage with people. If you don't go out there, every day I would pick a time in the morning, in the afternoon to walk the entire facilities. If I was traveling at a branch, if I was traveling to meet customers, whatever, is you got to engage with those internal and external customers that you have. Number one. Okay, you got to understand what's going on, and it's just like when you're selling something. We all sell ourselves every day, and the thing is, when you walk into somebody's workspace, you see that picture of Bobby, Bobby, the little kid, and it's as simple as showing interest in it or adding value to them. And so you engage, then they open up so you can empathize, which is the second. You understand what's going on with them because you can't inspire people to do things unless you understand why they want to do things, right? And you definitely can't motivate them. I mean, motivation, you can't motivate, but you can inspire people to go the direction you want. Once you understand and have an idea, well, empower them to do their job. Allow them to make those mistakes. And I think that's probably the biggest challenge. I had one technician, oh geez, probably 20 years ago. His name was Jim, and he was out in Nebraska. And he called me. He's working on a broken ATM of all things, and he's like, the customer's mad. It's been down 3 days, and he's like, well, I can't do that because I might break the ATM. I'm like, the ATM's broke. How can you break something that's broke?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I'm like, just do it. And the thing is, hey, there was more involved in that, of course, than just do it. But empowering him, telling him it's okay to make a mistake. He came from a different company and larger corporation where CYA was the rule. And the kicker is he fixed the equipment. The next day, the part arrived. He didn't even need the additional part that arrived. The customer was happy as ever, and they never talked bad about that technician again because you never threw him under the bus, but at the same time, you gave him what he needed to move on, which again, empowering him to do it, and then encouragement is the last key. Okay. So, I mean, it's very cut and dry. It's just in making sure that they understand, yeah, go for it. If you fail, I'm not going to come down on you. We're going to learn from it. It's just like, on a submarine, what you did is after each watch, if you were on station, you would go back through all your geoplot records and all the records for contacts, and you would reconstruct what was going on. Okay. And so that you could in turn, not make those mistakes again, or hopefully minimize the amount of times you make that mistake. So again, back to the 3 E's: engage, empathy, empower, and encourage, I think are big. And yeah, it's the 4 E's, excuse me. And the 3 P's, of course, you
Yeah.
got to concentrate on people, product, and process. I mean, those are the key areas. If you got to have your people. It's a three-legged stool. You got to have your people. You got to have some type of product, even if it might be people is your product, right? And you've got to have processes put in place or systems put in place to be able to handle it, But and like I say, it's a three-legged stool that you got to stand on, or you got to sit on. If any one of those areas are lacking, guess what? You're going to have challenges, and that's always been, when I walk into a location or work with a company, the key is to get the departments to concentrate on their core competencies for those companies that you're working with. I've worked with, like Cisco and Apple, and when I was working for IBM, where you'd go in there and you'd look for things that were not their core competencies so that they can get back to what they should be working on. So it's like, hey, use our technicians to do your work. Okay. That way
Mhm.
you don't have to build your own workforce out there. And, it's kind of the same idea. You use the same direction, the 4 E's and the 3 P's for whether or not it's an individual or a company. And that's what I'm doing with my company right now. I work with individuals and of course, organizations to try to make that happen. And I think the key areas where we lose people though is mid-level and frontline managers. They're advanced into positions and they receive no training in these areas. What are soft skills? What's this? What's that? How do I fill that out? And they receive very little training. So again, what happens to them is, they become cannon fodder. It's like, well, the guy's failing. Well, instead of giving him training or her training, we just toss them aside and put somebody else in that management position. So I mean, it's
Yeah.
again. So I think that if that works,
Yeah.
that's the direction.
You see that a lot in technical type, like, oh, you're the best technician, so we're going to put you in charge of all the other technicians.
Yeah.
Or you see that in software development a lot. You are the best software coder that we've got, so we're going to put you in charge of all the other software coders. Like, well, sometimes that person might not even want to be in a leadership position, um, because being a great technician does not make you a great leader. Now, the thing about the military and veterans is just by nature of the beast, military people have been, you know, pushed into leadership positions, forced into leadership positions, fought for leadership. You leadership is infused in everything you do in the military all the time, just because there are so many bad, uncomfortable, tough situations happening all the time that somebody's got to be in charge and make a decision. So there's a lot of leadership opportunity in the military. And civilian businesses typically don't hire based off of leadership. They hire based off of technical skill. And then they wonder why they don't have any leadership or they don't have any people that are capable of making decisions. So talk a little bit about the difference between being technically and tactically competent in your trade versus being a leader.
That's again, that's kind of an interesting direction, and I mean, it is very true. I've seen it too many times where people have been advanced into position, and it's having that as a leader, you're going to have that long term vision, of course. Where do I want to go to? Okay, now you have somebody above you probably telling you where you want to go, but how are you going to get there? That's going to be your direction. So you've got to lay that out. Where again that more technical or hey, I'm doing this, I'm doing this, I'm doing this, I'm doing this. All they want to do is make it through the day. Okay, they're not looking down the line, and that's where it goes back to what we were discussing a little earlier is being able to clearly communicate. What you're thinking, and why we're going this direction, not just giving a direction. Hey, this is what we're doing, so get there. No, no, it's you got to explain to them what's going on. They are partners in this journey, and at too many companies are not considered partners. And I think that's where you have to get senior leadership involved in the same direction. Where if you invest in these people, the it's a multiplier. It's not just a additive, it is multiplying. So I, going back to tactical or technical, again, you got different mindsets out there, and again, it's just like I do personality surveys. I use I'm actually certified Maxwell also, and I do Maxwell disc, to try to resolve these communication problems. Okay, because this type of person cannot understand what this type of person is like at all. It just makes no sense to them. They don't understand. If you have an alpha over here and somebody that's on the other side of the spectrum, they just don't. Unless you sit down and really try to work together, they're not going to understand. And how do you motivate those people then? How do you inspire them? How do you make sure that everybody's in the right seat in the bus? And I think that goes back to you can't just advance because that's the next step. You have to have alternative paths for people. And that's one of the things that I point out right now is you can have a more senior salesperson in place. They don't have to necessarily go into management. They can be an account. They can deal with certain accounts where you need that special expertise, and then their compensation, it basically is based on the criticality of those customers. So again, I think it's just getting to that direction. I think it's just you've really got to look at the people, and you've got to invest the time in them. You got to understand if they are the right fit, the right person for the right seat in the bus.
Yeah, can you talk about your observations, as a coach and a consultant, basically? Uh, it's probably a little different in large corporations, but a lot of times we're talking solo entrepreneurship or beginning entrepreneurs here. We're small teams, we're small businesses we're dealing with, and I've seen it many times myself where the founder of the business or the owner is they're the ones that are in the way of the business progressing and growing, and they don't even sometimes they don't even realize it. And oftentimes it's a control thing. Like I need to make every decision. I need to control everything. Otherwise, someone's going to screw me over, or no one's going to be as good as I could ever do it.
Yeah.
Uh, I've seen it time and time again. Like a place I got our golf cart from. He started off fixing golf carts. He's really good at fixing golf carts. He grew and grew and grew. Now he runs a big business where he fixes golf carts, but
Yeah.
he doesn't. He has no training or expertise and doesn't, or really desire to actually run the business. He'd really rather be in the garage fixing golf carts. Um, so talk a little bit about the best way I've heard this described is the difference between working in your business versus working on your business.
Hey, I think I'm going to start out and go, number one, life is here for us to enjoy. Okay. And if you build your business and you enjoy that hands on, you should be looking at doing it back to like what I was doing with Apple or whomever, it's like get people doing what they enjoy and they're going to do a heck of a lot better job. That doesn't mean they're not involved in the leadership,
Mm-hmm.
but the thing is, they can hire, it's back to that same attitude of putting the right people in the right position so they can concentrate on what they want to do. Because guess what? They might grow into other areas then. He or she might start tinkering around in not golf carts now. They might start working on ATVs, right? Because he's determined another channel for business. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Which then you document it, you have it all, you got your processes in place, you got the right people in place, you got the right product to be able to repair the stuff. Great and grand. But circling back to what you said about people being in the way, it's a big problem everywhere. It really is. And in fact, probably 2 years ago, I went to work for a company where they brought me in to fix our operations. Okay. They were a smaller company. They wanted to grow so they could sell. And I walked in there, and within a week, it was very apparent that nobody, the owner of this company, would never come around to what was required. Okay. And as an entrepreneur, I walked away from that business. Okay. Again, I'm not going to take money from somebody who doesn't want to follow a path. And that doesn't mean I know all the answers. But what
Yeah.
it does mean is that I've been through this before, and you've got to be a little flexible. And
In that
whether
case,
it's a corporate,
basically
go
the owner was going to have to change, and the owner didn't want to change.
exactly, he's not going to change, and I've seen that too many times. I like to concentrate on small and medium sized businesses or individuals. That's where I like to be because I find out that people are more apt to listen at that level. Okay. And when they invest in a coach or a consultant, what that money means more to them. Where with larger corporations, what I have found is they don't necessarily listen as much. They bring you in. You might be in there for eye candy. I know I'm not much eye candy, but that's the thing though. They bring you in. We're taking the right steps. We brought somebody in to look at this. Okay, but that's all they're doing. And that's why I say and so it's very very key to anytime you walk into that new environment to get that analysis done pretty darn quick. So and that's what I do when I first start. I kind of do like if I'm working with businesses, I like to do like oh geez, I'm trying now. I lost the name of that show about the CEOs that went and worked for the companies. For the life of me, I can't remember the
Yeah,
name of that show.
undercover boss, right?
Thank you,
I,
Undercover
I
Boss.
love
Right?
those. I love those shows,
Yeah,
and like you see it in like Bar Rescue. I mean, all the time. In those TV
yeah.
shows and seeing it personally also. Like, okay, so let me ask you: 9 times out of 10, where typically does the problem exist?
That's well, that again, 9 times out of 10, it's upper management.
It's the boss, yeah. Like, especially
It's
the
somewhere
smaller
in
you
upper management, right? It's you've got good people. They hunker down. They're saving their lives, their livelihoods. They do what they're told. It's just like I've seen that too. I've walked away from a company and then I've come back after the company's been sold to a PE firm, right? And they do their things to that company. And, it was a small, medium sized business. Now it's a PE owned business. And then you go back and you see them slide back into those old routines, where I'm following the process exactly as it says it is, so I don't get in trouble. That's it. I'm not raising my hand. I'm not doing anything. And so, yeah, I mean, it is normally leadership, and it's not that they mean to do anything wrong. It's just they're not always willing to look at alternatives.
Absolutely. Um, talk about some of talk about specifically or in general success stories where you've seen things turn around in a very successful way.
Well, I'll use the most recent one. When COVID hit, I was running operations and sales for it's a smaller, yeah, medium sized company here in the Missouri area, and I was actually working as a W-2 at that point. Okay, they asked me to come in there. I hung up my other hat and went and did that for them, and well, just a few months after I rolled in the door, of course, they had here's my three priorities when I was hired. And then when I arrived, those three priorities went away, and there were three other priorities. And less than 6 months later, I visited all the branches, started doing the changes that we needed, internally, and and COVID hit. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
and the thing is, upper management wanted to shut the doors tight, and we were what would be considered an essential business. So basically, what we ended up doing is okay. Let's pull up every state law, every municipal law where we have a facility, and because we're doing both business to business and we're parts delivery and also retail. And what we did is we aligned our entire business. We had to downsize because of COVID, of course. Out the gate, it's like, well, last time this happened in 2008, the world went, whatever, went to, 18 double L's, right? And, but basically the direction we ended up going after I laid it out was here, this is what we need to do. We need to allow more autonomy at the branch level. Basically threw away all our processes and procedures because the world had totally changed on us. And we rewrote them and made them simple and gave, what I wanted to do originally that no one would agree with, months earlier. Basically, we gave the branch managers autonomy to do what they needed to do out there at their branches to make it work. And with 70% of the people they had before COVID, they were at 150% of what was expected for sales. Okay. And we're talking millions and millions and millions of dollars, and which positioned the company to sell them to a PE firm. So it's like, and then of course being in management, they bring in their own management team, and that's when I folded back over to doing what I'm doing now. But this time I pretty much kicked the wheels out, kicked the kickstand out, and I'm rolling forward doing consulting, coaching, and speaking. Those three areas, to just go in there and help companies.
Awesome. Well, hey Jay, if somebody wants more information about Wolfpack leadership, how do they do that?
Well, I'm going to give you an email address, and the reason why is because right now my website, et cetera, is under development. Reach out to Jay's Speaking, and that's two S's on there, Jay's Speaking at gmail.com.
Awesome. Okay.
Okay.
Jay, I do want to give you the last word. If you're talking to somebody that's in the military and they're transition out, looking to start their own business, get into entrepreneurship, what kind of advice
Yeah.
comes from?
I think, I'm gonna sit down, I'm gonna go, don't take no for an answer anywhere. Period. You know, I've always lived by the adage over, under, around, or through. And Joe, I think you were a Marine, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, that's it. Period. There's always a way to make it happen. And like I said earlier, having a degree matters. But every time I wanted to advance, I mean, I've been vice president of operations at multiple companies, and the thing is, I had to work my way up normally somehow. But the thing is, you can do it. You are enough. You have the experience. You have the decision making capability, and that's the biggest thing on the outside that you need is the willingness and the ability to make decisions because you can always fix them.
Awesome. Well,
Okay.
hey, Jay, um, thanks for sharing your entrepreneurial success story. Great business advice. Some good stuff. Appreciate you sharing and look forward to seeing your future success.
Thank you, Joe. I appreciate it.
All right. These two veterans are asking Mike.